Real quick question. If you're a reptile keeper, has this ever happened to you?
Hey, Jay.
Oh, hey Sandra, how are you? Any plans for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm getting a puppy.
No way, that's so awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for you. That's great news. Boy or girl, what type of breed? What's going on?
I'm getting a boy golden doodle. I can't wait.
Oh man, that's really fantastic. I'm super excited for you. That's such great news.
Yeah, so what are you doing?
Actually, I'm also getting a new pet this weekend. Getting a pet boa constrictor.
Why?
Not sure about you, but I have definitely had that happen to me more than one time. So why is it that reptile keepers, invertebrate keepers, or maybe even exotic keepers have to justify why they're keeping these animals? You don't typically get that same response from somebody who keeps a dog or a cat. Well, let's discuss this topic in a little bit more detail. I'll break down some thought process that I have. Keep the video pretty light, but hopefully this will give insight onto why we keep the animals that we keep. I'm Jay. This is Jay's Cryptic Creatures. Let's learn something together. For starters, let's keep in mind that a pet is a pet. We're going to love them regardless of what other people say. Let's try to keep an open mind. Whether it's a dog person versus somebody keeps a monitor lizard, or a cat person versus the dog person. We all keep these creatures because we have some sort of affection towards them, and we should make sure that we keep that in the forefront of our mind, that these are animals, these are living creatures, and they deserve our respect at the very least. So in this video, we'll talk about kind of the normal pets, dogs and cats, versus some of the other more exotic pets. In my case, I keep a bunch of different tarantulas, and then I keep boa constrictors as well as Burmese python and a Argentine black and white tegu. So I'll be trying to speak more from my personal experience and try to keep things to what I'm familiar with. So for starters, we want to discuss about how these animals are kept. So, and what the difference are between them. So if we look at a snake, like the cages I have behind me right here, let's use a typical 4 foot by 2 foot enclosure. I typically go with animal plastic enclosures, but there's a litany of other companies that make great enclosures as well. Black box, animal plastics, like I mentioned, cages, the list can go on. This size is typically right around the $300 to $400 price range. And then inside of that enclosure, you're going to need some heat source, whether it be lamps. I go with radiant heat panels. They go for about $150. You'll need some substrate. I go with cocoa chunks. That's, $50-$60 right there. And then you want some sort of decor. So all in, really, to enclose or house one of these snakes, you're looking at $500 to $600 in total. When you look at something more like a tarantula, there's a couple different options that you have out there. The kind of basic terrestrial enclosure is a critter keeper is the one I like to use, and that can vary in sizes. That's probably somewhere between 10 and 20 bucks. Arboreal setups, I like to go with the Exoterra minis. Glass front opening enclosures, they're a little bit more expensive, getting up to $100 or so. And then you want some cork bark and some accessories mixed in there. But to enclose, to house at least one tarantula, you're looking at somewhere, between, we'll say, $30 up to $150, somewhere in that tune per tarantula. Now you compare that to something like a dog. One, you need a house. So we're not going to count that kind of in the equation because we're kind of living in the house now, or you're living in an apartment. So that's already covered. You're not getting that exclusively for the animal. But let's say you want to take and fence in your backyard. Assuming a 40 by 40 foot backyard, I did some quick looking at Home Depot. So chain link, some poles, some cross supports, a gate, etc., etc. You're probably looking somewhere in the tune of $1,500 to $2,000. On top of that, maybe you could get that put together in a weekend. I know I'm not that handy. It would probably take me several weekends, if not a month. Or you would hire a contractor to go ahead and do that, and that would be, a significant increase in that price as well. So the difference between your commitment to housing a dog versus that of a spider or a snake is significantly different. Another thing to consider while looking at your tarantula or snake compared to your dog or a cat is, keeping it alive, food and water. So I tend to feed my adult boas about once a month. I usually feed them, an extra large rat or maybe a double XL, something along those lines. And that will come at a cost on the high side, we'll say $10 per rat. So once a month I feed my boa a rat at about $10. However, I buy in bulk at expos, so that price is significantly different. Looking at my tarantulas, my adults, I feed, every 2 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on what they look like. But in general, let's just assume that they're eating 5 crickets twice a week. I'm sorry, 5 crickets twice a month. It's about $1 per 5 crickets, so $2 worth of crickets per month. So it's quite a bit different than when you look at like a cat or a dog that you're feeding multiple times throughout the course of a day, bags of food, dry food, wet food, etc. When in doing research for this video, I was looking at what we feed our cat, and the cat gets a can of wet food once per day at night, and then some dry food throughout the course of a month. And between the dry food and the wet food, it averages about $50 a month for food. The food carries directly into the kind of the next quick topic, and that's lifestyle, we'll call it. So I really got into snakes and inverts when I was traveling a significant amount for work. Before COVID, I was probably traveling 60% of the time. So, caring for a cat or a dog is a lot of effort. My wife is here and my children to feed the cat. But, that's drastically different than, the snakes or the spiders that eat, every couple weeks. And, while it wasn't home, it wasn't a burden on them to take care of these animals. So that was a significant benefit to me keeping these type of animals. And then on top of it, when we go on vacation, we typically don't go for an extended period of time as a family, maybe a week, maybe a little bit more than that. But all of the animals are not needed to be looked at so intensely versus, we always got to make sure that we have somebody come over to feed the cat. It's a lot harder to have somebody come over and, feed all your snakes or feed all your spiders. People are a little bit more adverse to doing that. But this allows us to travel as a family, me travel for work, without having the threat of the animals going into neglect. Similar to the vacation topic and not being readily available at all times, in the micro version of this is snakes and inverts don't need, we'll say, traditional exercise. So while snakes will certainly appreciate climbing experiences and things of enrichment, the jury's still out on tarantulas about what degree of enrichment they need, but neither necessarily needs full-blown exercise when compared to that of a dog or a cat. For those of us who have had kittens or puppies, if they're not overly stimulated, you will see it gets taken out on furniture, walls. They get a little bit destructive. And then even that progresses along as adults. You need to go out and walk your dog and get the correct amount of exercise. With that being said, not all dogs are created equal. Some are, significantly more into the exercise and the need to be, working, if you will. And cats, while they don't probably need the amount of exercise or mental stimulation as that of a dog, they certainly need some sort of exercise and playtime and other enrichment as well. So that's a little bit of a split between kind of your traditional pet versus your inverts. And as people convert or move into invert keeping and snake keeping, that's a bit of a struggle for them because you're used to having to really care for your dogs and your cats. Not saying you don't have to care for your snakes and your spiders, but it's not as intense or as hands-on. So it takes a little bit of practice of letting go. But when you get comfortable with that, you really begin to enjoy the experience of said snakes and spiders. So to prove I'm not completely biased in this discussion, we'll start talking a little bit more about that bonding experience. So as we were talking about the tarantulas and the spiders and the snakes, they'll need that mental stimulation or the exercise. Sad to say, they don't really need you all that much either. Tarantulas certainly, they don't crave or need attention from us. We're a big monster in their world, and they're actually more comfortable with us not being around. Snakes, depending on the snake, my Burmese, probably more than my boas, seems to be aware that I'm in the room. Acknowledges that I'm there, but again, doesn't necessarily need me or show me a significant amount of affection. This is obviously a little bit different as you move into cats, who tend to really provide affection on their terms. Like, you can certainly pet cats and things of that nature, but that's the running joke, is the cats want to come to you when they want affection. You don't necessarily go to them. It's almost like a roommate in your house rather than a pet. And then that moves even further on to dogs. And we know that, dogs being man's best friend, the amount of attention and affection that they get and receive, give and receive, is really not too comparable to anything else. And that kind of comes with pros and cons, right? So, depending on your personality, you may not want that constant need, that constant clingy, that constant drive to be next to your dog, versus your reptiles, where you can kind of step away a little bit and have two different lives, if you will. And I guess in reality, cats are somewhere in the middle, where they certainly need you to feed and whatnot else, but they kind of go and do their own thing. So in reality, it's the individual, right? What are you really looking for in a pet that serves your needs, and it equally, you're in serving your needs, you're able to serve the needs of that animal as well. So hopefully this video, is all in good fun. The reality is each individual's taste is going to be unique to that individual, right? We'll meet people that are terrified of snakes, are terrified of spiders, that can't wrap their head around why we would keep them. But let's be aware too that people are very afraid of dogs in certain circumstances, and they have valid reasons on why they would never have a dog, and why a cat person is a cat person and not a dog person. Let's all be aware that, we love these animals, these pets, regardless of where they fall at on, a taxonomy scale. However, if you really want a good laugh, go check out Clint's Reptiles. He does a great video on the worst pet, and I think everybody will really enjoy it. It's worth a watch. It's really well done. But to kind of conclude all this out, the important thing, like with most of the videos that I put out, is do your research. And that's a little bit different when it comes to reptiles than it does for dogs or cats, but it's really, the heart of it's the same. So if you're going to get into tarantula keeping, you want to do your research on your genus, your species. Is it fossorial? Is it arboreal? temperatures, things of that nature. In the same respect, we shouldn't just go blindly pick up a dog or a cat either. There are dogs that are highly active, and there's dogs that are less active. If you're a high-driven individual, probably doesn't make sense to get a very large dog that can, hurt itself through intense exercise. And on the inverse of that, if you're a person that is lazier, like myself, you'd be hard-pressed to get a husky where you're going to be running and doing all types of activities just to get all the energy out. So it's up to us to understand what we're getting into, understanding the animal, and making sure that we make the right decision for us as well as that individual pet. With that being said, this is Jay. I appreciate the watch. Like, subscribe, and let's continue to learn about cryptic creatures together.